Hey everyone, Matt here from Doctoring, and today we're going to talk about some of the few shoes that have forefoot stability methods in them. So we talk about stability throughout the length of the shoe all the time, and every model that we get to review, have the fortune of reviewing. Frequently, some of the methods that we'll talk about include things like flaring of the sole, or plates, or stiffening agents. These are all ways you can create stability up front, in fact, in any part of the shoe. But in particular, the forefoot, that usually gets left behind. Most of the shoes that are stability shoes in the market really focus on the heeled midfoot. That's where the sidewalls are usually located. If there is a post or if there is geometrical changes, most of those shoes will have that kind of in the back half of the shoe, where the front half kind of gets left behind, or they add some stiffening agent or kind of an aggressive rocker to help roll you forward, which for a lot of people, that might work well. For people that actually need help with the amount of motion in the side-to-side plane or frontal plane at the forefoot, that may not always be enough. There are a few models that I want to talk about, and that's the whole point of doing this video, that actually do provide real forefoot stability methods. These are all medial, by the way. These are not lateral. So if you have lateral stability in these are not going to be great options for you, because they're all going to be pushing you lateral. So if you go too far lateral to forefoot, say if you toe off excessively on the fifth metatarsal, the outside of your foot, these are not going to be good for you. But if you're someone whose first metatarsal, the inner part of your forefoot, collapses quite a bit, and you just need something that kind of helps hold you up and controls that motion, so instead of collapsing in where you're able to toe off and go forward, these three are going to be good options for you to consider. However, they are different, so hopefully this video will help you figure out which one of these might work best for you in that situation, if you're even interested in this at all. So the three of them are going to be the New Balance 860 version 14, the Mountain Coast P1, which is their stability shoe, and the Puma Forever Run Nitro. So I have different opinions of these. We have different reviews of them, but I want to really focus on the front of the shoe. But I'll talk about a little bit about how this thing rides in general. Let's talk about specs first. So men's size 9, women's size 10.5. The 860 V14 is coming in at 10.5 ounces, or about around 298 grams. Stack height wise coming in at 38 millimeters in the heel, 30 in the forefoot, the heaviest of the group, but also the lowest drop, relatively, just being an 8 millimeter drop. The Mountain Coast P1 is 9.9 ounce for women's size 9, women's size 10.5, 37 millimeters in the heel, 38 in the forefoot for a 10 millimeter drop. Did I not say it's 280 grams? I really try hard to memorize this beforehand. 280 grams. The Puma Forever Run Nitro is coming in at 9.6 ounces for men's size 9, women's size 10.5, or about 274 grams. And the stack height is 36 millimeters in the heel, 26 in the forefoot, also a 10 millimeter drop, just like the Mountain Coast P1. Now, how all these do forefoot stability is somewhat similar and somewhat different. The 860 and the Forever Run both do this through a wedge, and hopefully I'm not wrong on this, because that was my understanding. The Forever Run actually has the medial part of the forefoot, or the inner part, is actually raised 1 millimeter above where the lateral part of the forefoot is. So that is what's called a wedge. When the sole is elevated on one side like this and not as much the other, that is a wedge type design, different than a post, where the medial aspect is a little bit firmer. We'll talk about that with Mountain Coast, if that technically counts, and you can call me on that if you don't think it counts, that's fine. But the 860 and the Puma Forever Run have the inner part of the forefoot that is a little bit higher. So the 860 does this by elevating it with this material, with softer material on top, firm below, and then again, only that softer material on the outside, so you have this elevation of the firm material on the medial side. The Puma Forever Run does it mildly, where it's, again, just a little bit more material on that medial side compared to the lateral side. Now, what this does, if you're someone that collapses medially, you have something to fall into that's kind of already holding you up. So for those of you that like being held up a little bit, if you're someone that has maybe an elevated first ray or first MTP joint, again, if you don't know what that is, we'll do a totally different video on that. Sorry, some people have some not postural issues, but the front of the foot is elevated on one side a little bit. That's where these work really well, where it actually brings the ground up to you. It can be really, really helpful for people that need that. Now, the 860, in my mind, is going to be more aggressive than the Forever Run, because the 1 millimeter doesn't feel nearly as much as the amount that the 860 has. The 860 is more of the moderate to higher stability shoe. The Forever Run is more of the mild guidance shoe. So if you want that mild amount, the Forever Run is going to be the better option. If you want a little bit more and want to be a little more prominent, the 860 is going to be the better option of the two of them. Now, if you don't want a wedge design, you don't want to have something coming up to you, you just want a firmer piece to be able to roll into, that's where the Mountain Coast P1 is going to come in. So what they have is what's called an arch rail, kind of like plastic piece in there It's probably not plastic. I apologize. I don't remember what the material is. But it runs exactly as you see inside the sole with this outsole piece. So there is a thick amount here, and it kind of rolls in and it gets really thick on the medial side of the forefoot. So if you're collapsing in on the medial side, you're going to feel this piece, and you can actually see it right here. You're going to feel that and kind of roll in that, and the additional stiffness is going to keep you a little bit more lateral and help you roll forward and toe off appropriately, hopefully, for you. So you will not feel this standing there. The other two, you can feel this just standing, like, oh, I feel the inside raise a little bit. Mounted coast, you're not going to feel it until you're running, until you're compressing the sole. So if you like a little bit more post-like or a little bit stiffer medial aspect, and that's what's going to be a little more stability to keep you lateral, give you that control over inward motion, or I'm hesitating to say pronation because people like to go off on that word, but it describes emotion. If that's what you need, the mounted coast shoe is going to be the better option just mechanically for you. Now, there's a lot of other differences between these shoes. They couldn't be any more different. So the 860 is the more trainer shoe of all of these. The Forever Run is obviously the lightest of this group. The Mounted Coast P1 is really like an ultra marathon racing training shoe, and it's the only one that has a P-based foam. This one, the 860, is just not fast. It's really meant for training shoes. It's a little bit on the heavier side. It's kind of the softest, the most compliant midsole of the group. But it's just really meant for training. It's got the best heel, I will tell you that. The bevel here is done really, really well. So if you need full length stability, or if you need transition from heel to toe and you're still a heel striker, the 860 is really going to be the best option. Personally, this is my favorite of the group. Both the other two have fairly clunky heels. I feel like these ones are really meant for people that are landing kind of like midfoot forward, because you see the P1 has a fairly large heel posterior flare here, and just a little bit clunky back there, but it's the only one that has a P-back-based foam, so it can pick up the pace a little bit. And then the Forever Run is the lightest of the group, but you can see very large heel, something we kind of didn't like when we did Bach and I did our review. So very clunky heel, but once you get forward, very smooth toe off. So I will say the Mounted Coast is a better option if you want a little bit up-tempo and definitely longer run option, whereas the Forever Run just has a little bit softer sole relatively, more responsive, slightly softer, but has a really nice toe off and very gentle. So if you're somebody who's a forefoot striker, maybe you want mild guidance, I would go for just pure training, the Forever Run, if you can handle this thicker upper. Whereas if you want a more comfortable and a little bit wider upper, and you want something that can handle a little longer distance, maybe a little bit of up-tempo stuff, the Mounted Coast P1 might be a better option. I will say I criticized this shoe initially as not being something that can handle up-tempo stuff. At 50 miles, the foam has broken in, and it can do a little bit up-tempo efforts. And definitely, if you want to hold an up-tempo pace and go for a lot longer, it actually works really well. Forever Run, I have not been able to do that. It kind of feels better at training paces. Now, I know we're talking about forefoot stability, but the upper is also something to consider. So the uppers all fit fairly true to size. The Mounted Coast is the only one that fits just a teeny bit short, but it has broken in. If you're doing ultras, I would really consider going a half size up and trying that. But the uppers are fairly good. Mounted Coast and the 860 both fit on the wider side, so if you need a little bit more width, these two are going to be a better option. Whereas the Forever On has a much lower volume upper, kind of more normal width throughout the length of the shoe, but the volume sits really low against the foot. So if you need more volume, these two, Mounted Coast and New Balance, are going to be a better option. If you need less volume, Puma is probably going to be the better option for you. Just a little bit thicker upper. I had a little trouble lace locking the heel. I got a little heel slippage, but that did break in. And overall, I think these are solid options. There is not a ton of and there never really has been that much in the way of forefoot stability, which kind of leaves us with these main options. And I will review again what I said at the beginning. Unless you really need mild guidance, which then you can get it from a plate is one way, like especially a wide plate, narrow plate, not as much maybe. A really wide sole, so if the sole is flared in the forefoot, that can be a really big option. Or if you need lateral stability in the forefoot, please don't listen to this. These are not going to be good options for you. Things that might be helpful for lateral forefoot stability include having the sole flare out quite a bit. Some old New Balance models tend to do this really well. I'll do a separate video if I can find those, but for right now, these are the top ones for medial forefoot stability. Hope this was helpful. Please let me know in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know if you need to clarify any specific terms that I use, because I know I talk quite a bit and sometimes I miss things that I need to explain. And again, I know I always finish with this and repeat it multiple times. But these videos help you figure out what you need and what may work best for you.